Government of Pakistan has taken many steps and set up many targets for the next 10 years. The RE policy, renewable energy policy, which was announced in 2020, that set the target of 25% by 2025 and 30% of RE by 2030. So the current magnitude and current quantum of the RE is only 5%. So the government has set up the target to take it to 30% in the year 2030. Similarly, the policy which was announced, if we talk about the next 10 years, 20 years vision, the government announced National Electricity Policy last year, June, and that clearly sets out fundamental objectives and goals of the policy, which states that we want to bring in the competitive market, we want to bring in more efficiency and transparency in the system, we want to add new power generation capacity which is environmental friendly, and government want to go in environmental with full environmental responsibility, and we want to provide electricity access to all the citizens of Pakistan at an affordable prices. So these are the broadly goal, and further we want to rely more and more on the indigenous resources instead of going to the imported fuel, so that energy security is also ensured. So these are the targets which have been set up. And if we look at the indicative generation expansion plan, which has also been finalized and approved last year, that plan sets up the target of around 61% of renewable energy by 2030. It includes about 37% of hydro and 22% renewable energy. So that means by 2030 we will be having around 61% plus electricity from the clean resources, which is hydro and renewable energy resources. And even in the remaining, if we look at the generation from the clean energy resources, will touch around 90%. Because as we increase the renewable energy resources, our generation from the thermal resources will go down. And in this IGSEP, actually, the plan is to retire around 6,000 megawatt of thermal power plants in the next 10 years. So that is the overall picture which government is foreseeing to take the power sector forward. As I said earlier, the whole focus of the policy objective and of our generation expansion plan for the next 10 years is on the clean and green energy. The fact is evident from this thing that in the indicative generation expansion plan for the next 10 years, there is no new coal project, there is no new gas project, there is no new oil project. So the focus is on the hydropower projects and the renewable energy projects. Similarly, if we look at the numbers, although Pakistan is one of the lowest carbon contributors in the world, but this is in the climate change, this is 10 most affected countries. So government is looking at all these perspectives, and if we specifically talk about the power sector, our current CO2 emission is 358 grams per kilowatt hour of generation. We want to take it to 198 grams per kilowatt hour, which is almost half of that. Similarly, with the new addition, the more and more renewable energy will be coming to the grid. Currently, if we look at the plants which are in setup, we have around 40,000 megawatt of capacity in the country, if we include K Electric also. And out of this 40,000 megawatt, 56% is in the private sector and 44% is in the public sector. And that is going to be further diluted when these power plants are being closed, thermal power plants in the public sector are being closed. So this actually shows the confidence of the investor and the consistency of the government policies to attract more and more investment from the private sector. So mainly no new power plants have been done except the LNG plants in the last 20 years. So government is consistently focusing on bringing in more and more investment from the private sector. Similarly, going forward, all the new generation except large reservoir-based hydropower projects which are being set up by WAPDA, all the new power generation will be coming from the private sector, and that's the plan. In this, CPAC has played a major role, and they have brought in around 6,000 megawatt in the last 5-6 years have been commissioned, and another 7,000 are in pipeline. So they are all private sector projects. So focus still remains on the private sector. Our current hydro percentage, as I said earlier, is around 27-28%, and the renewable energy is only between 5 and 6% now. So if we add both, so we reach around 32-33% of renewable energy. But again, if we look at in terms of clean energy, we have 7% nuclear, which is also considered relatively clean, and similarly we have about 30% on gas, which is also considered relatively clean thermal. So that is another 37%. Coal is 13% in the current power generation plan, and even till 2030, it is not going to increase beyond 17%. So overall, till 2030, we have only 17% coal, and we will increase the renewable energy to 61%. So that these are the targets. Overall import, as you know, in the country is around 12 to 14 billion US dollar, depending upon the priority, and I would say around 50% goes to the power sector and 50% to the transportation sector. So that's a huge bill, and for coal it's around 2 billion US dollar per year, which obviously vary with the prices of the coal and with the prices of oil. And we are also looking at if it is technically possible that we should convert these imported coal power plants to the local coal power plants eventually, which will take some time, but this is on the plan of the government in terms of energy security and using more and more indigenous resources. Further, in terms of environmental compliance, one thing is very important to highlight regarding these coal power projects, that they are all compliant with the World Bank and IFC international environmental standards. We are not following in this case the Pakistan environmental standards, which are less stringent. Rather, they are all compliant with the international environment standard of the World Bank and IFC. So since we need some base load and we need some upgradation and renovation of our national grid, so we are doing coal, but we are cognizant that this should not go unchecked, and there shall be fully environmental compliant on the coal power plant. Current power demand is around 26,000, which is being served, and if we add, maybe there is around 3,000 megawatt of demand which is not being served. So our IGCEP actually foresees this demand to go to 40,000 by end of 2030, which is addition of around 15-16,000. At the same time, our current generation capacity, which is around 40,000 megawatt, that will increase to 61,000 megawatt by 2030. And this require investment of around 32 billion US dollar in terms of capex and the opex of these power plants, and at the same time continue to put up a huge sum to actually develop the transmission and distribution system to take this power to the consumer. So that is a huge target on which Government of Pakistan is working. But again, Government of Pakistan is committed to basically follow the SDG 7 goals, affordable, sustainable and accessible electricity to every citizen. So that is the goal. Similarly, I think government is taking many initiatives in terms of environment. You know, the electric vehicles, the 10 billion tree initiative. So all these initiatives show the government commitment to improve the environment and do less and less new power plants and other projects based on the fossil fuels and carbon emissions. I'm heading actually two organizations currently. One is the Alternate Energy Development Board, and the other one is Private Power and Infrastructure Board. So both these organizations work as a one-window facility for the investors who want to set up power plant and infrastructure. The only difference is that in AEDB we handle the renewable energy projects, while in PPIB we handle the hydropower projects and the thermal power projects. So our role is to work as a one-stop organization on behalf of the Government of Pakistan and facilitate the investors, provide them the required approval and the government guarantees and sign agreements with them. And so far we have been quite successful. If we look at PPIB, around 17,500 megawatt have been added from the private sector through PPIB facilitation, which is around 50% of the national grid. Similarly, if we look at AEDB, the AEDB has added 40 projects of around 2,000 megawatt. These are purely RE-based projects, wind, solar, and bagasse-based projects. AEDB has 14 projects under construction with the capacity of around 750 megawatt. And our next target is actually to bring in 1,000 megawatt of solar power projects and 1,000 megawatt of wind power projects in 2024. So these projects are required to be commissioned in 2024, for which we will be carrying out competitive bidding in March this year. 2 months from now, we will be carrying out a competitive bidding. And then for 2025 requirement, we will be holding another competitive bidding by end of this year. So these are the targets on which we are working. As I said earlier, the government of Pakistan policy is to do more and more projects on competitive bidding basis, so that the efficiency could be brought to the sector. So that is what we are doing. And another big initiative which I think will go a long way in terms of improving the efficiency and financial sustainability of the power sector. By May this year, the competitive trading market in the power sector will be started in the country. Initially, the quantum will be low, but this will be a big initiative where we don't have to make all the contracts with the national public sector companies, so they can go and sell in the market. So there will be more B2B transaction in this respect. Another initiative which is being facilitated by AEDB, that is the rooftop solar or net metering. So wherein the consumer can set up a solar power project and they can sell excess electricity to the distribution companies and the national grid. In this context, AEDB actually approves and certify the vendors who install this system. Before AEDB certification, the consumers have a complaint that they were provided with substandard equipment, substandard panel, and there was no after-sale services if after 1-2 years the system is not working. So the consumer was in a very bad shape. So now with the AEDB certification, we have ensured that the vendors supply the standard equipment which is specified, and they provide the standard warranties for these equipment, and similarly they provide after sale service for that. And this is a very popular initiative because so far about 17,000 consumers have installed this system, and in total it adds to 287 megawatt. So gradually it is becoming popular and is becoming to some extent a competitor of the national grid. So this is a cheap electricity and this is environmental friendly electricity. So this will also add to reduction of the CO2 and the fossil fuel generation in the country.